This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. You're listening to Lansing Online News Radio with Bonnie and Bill. That's Bonnie Bucqueroux and Bill Castaneer. We have a live webcast at the same time. You can find that at www.lansingonlinenews.com. Greetings, Bill. Good to see you.
Good evening. It's great to see you.
It's a wonderful show tonight. I announced on Facebook this morning for many of Mike Hughes' many fans from the Lansing State Journal days when he was for many years the TV critic for the Lansing State Journal, and he continues to stay very active in critiquing what's going on television nowadays. But now you do it in a variety of different formats. You have your website and what kinds of things. How are you getting the word out about TV?
Well, it's actually, I syndicate my column now, so it's called TV America, and I syndicate it to a dozen papers.
Excellent.
One of which is Lansing State Journal, fortunately,
Oh,
so I can read it myself, which is good. And then there are papers as big as the Cincinnati Enquirer or as small as Oshkosh Northwestern. So they're all sizes. And then, I also put things on www.mikehughes.tv, not .com. No one ever finds TV because that means I'm somehow related to the island of Tuvalu.
Oh,
right?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's why it's a slightly,
I personally have never been to the island of Tuvalu, but I'm really grateful it's there.
And you're a big hit there, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. If they have TV sets there, I don't know. Yeah.
How many years have you been reviewing television shows?
About 38. Yeah, about 38 years.
Is Howdy Doody still on the air? No,
I guess
not. No.
But I tell you, I watched Howdy Doody when I was.
So did I.
Man, TV has changed so much, and much of it is for the better, and some of it is for the worse. You miss. Matter of fact, as we're talking here live, you miss the shows. There were so many shows that were live. You missed variety shows. You missed the
There's
fact,
no more variety shows at all.
You missed the fact that as great as it was to see the Beatles, and the Beatles were wonderful that first night. You missed the fact that there was going to be a juggler afterwards, and there was a comedy act before, and there'd be a Broadway tune by the end of the hour.
A friend of mine was on that show.
And some guy spinning plates.
Terry McDermott was on that show.
Oh, is that right?
The Olympic speed skating champion. That
wow.
year, he was the only one to win an Olympic medal for the U.S. that year. He was on the show, and the reason that Sullivan put him on the show is he was a barber. I mean, there was a little bit more to do because he thought it was cute. Barber and the Beatles. It's clever man. Clever man.
I remember watching, it was a show called Climax. And I saw somebody get shot in the middle of the show, right? And then they focused on the body on the floor. Well, the guy who was down on the floor must have assumed the camera was off there because it was live. He started to crawl out of the scene. It's awfully hard to have the dead body crawl his way out of the scene and still stay in character afterwards. Yeah.
You can't mourn him very well. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that was live TV drama, and people talk about live TV drama fondly. I don't know if it was that good. But there were some great things, like 12 Angry Men, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Originally done as live dramas on TV.
Patty Chayefsky used to do his wonderful plays. I remember seeing Kim Stanley in a play called Summer Reunion. He just wrote incredible dialogue. I still remember a line from there when I was a kid. And Kim Stanley looked at somebody and said, "You'll say things at midnight that you wouldn't say at noon." And I thought, God, just great lines. I mean, I love all that great playwriting. Yeah. A lot of Hollywood actors got their start in that early 1950s golden age of television.
Yeah. People like Kirk Douglas and that, inherited.
Paul Newman.
Yeah, and one of their frustrations, I remember, I think it was Cliff Robertson, starred in a couple of different shows, but they both went on to, someone else starred in the movie, So what he finally did, including, I think, Requiem of a Heavyweight, so finally what he did, he started buying rights himself. So that he could own the show, It helps if you're married to an heiress.
Now, who did Requiem for a Heavyweight on TV? I think it was Mickey Rooney, maybe.
I
should have had to.
We're not going to pull this one out.
No,
I can't.
I remember singing it, and I thought it was Anthony Quinn.
Okay, one version was Anthony Quinn, probably. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But the point is, there was some great things back then. Overall, I don't think it would be nearly as good as some of the great things nowadays when you have the freedom to write them, to take your time to do it. But you just have to pick and choose. Certainly some of the great things aren't, many of those shows have vanished overnight now. But, man, if you took the whole scope, if you showed someone from the 1950s what they could find now on HBO and Showtime and FX, if you showed them A Night of Justified with that great dialogue in FX, or if you showed them even an episode of House, they'd be really impressed. Overall, TV's a lot better. There's just parts of it that you miss.
Right. Some of the spontaneity, which is gone, but that's. I think I was waiting for the screw ups as much as anything else.
Yeah.
So I mean, you get the blooper reels for those, I guess.
Well, when you mentioned good things on television, by chance, have you seen the new Hemingway movie?
Oh yeah,
HBO?
yeah, that's
Is
a
it
good one. Yeah, and it's a fascinating thing because for some reason it says Hemingway and Gellhorn, and I'm thinking, who is Gellhorn? Well, he was married to her for 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, Martha Gellhorn.
She was probably his match.
Yeah,
she was.
And that's what makes this such a great movie. Nicole Kidman plays her beautifully. Clive Owen plays him adequately. But the thing was, she was his female equivalent, which made her both perfect for him and absolutely wrong for him. Because, the people always have to be the smartest man in the room. Hemingway always had to be the biggest guy in the room. He had to be the most macho in the room. It eventually drove him crazy that he was none of that when he was with his wife. So
she was as good a writer.
Yeah,
she didn't write quite the same, but she was a great writer.
So they had this great relationship. They married for 5 years. It fell apart. She went on for another 45 years after that. And it's a fascinating story. So whenever that reruns on HBO, definitely watch Hemingway and Gellhorn. And I would say that that's just a good example of what we're talking about. That as much as we long for the old days, when something is good on TV right now, it's great.
I look at what happened with the movies, and in order to fill those large theaters, that they have out at the various multiplexes nowadays, they really need to aim for the lowest common denominator, and for kids who are willing to take a date out on a Friday night and spend $30, or family. So there's a lot of family movies. For adult quality drama, you cannot beat something like Nurse Jackie on cable TV. I mean, some of the work being done there is just exceptional.
Yeah, there isn't very much intimate being done in movie theaters because you want something that will do one of two things. The two biggest things going in movie theaters are the Pixar type cartoons, and let me tell you, they are great. The quality of family cartoons right now are just wonderful. I mean, Rio was one of my favorite movies of last year.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's just a delight. The music is fantastic. The look is great. You'll love Rio. You'll watch it sometime. Watch it. Okay. But, and then the big action films. And one of the good things about big action films now is at least they're getting good guys to write the scripts, like Joss Whedon and stuff like that. But if you want an intimate movie or a clever movie, probably will be on TV. There are exceptions. Right now in theaters, there's something called the Magnolia Hotel.
Is that good? The exotic Magnolia Hotel?
Yeah. It's just a fun movie that takes all these old British actors and actresses led by Maggie Smith and Judi Dench. Gives them a lot of fun, offbeat material. Films it in India. It's a good film. Definitely see it. But that's the exception. Because, like you said, movies are made mostly for kids and young dating people. Otherwise, stay home, watch TV, watch Showtime and HBO and FX, and that's where you find it.
One of the challenges for you must be, however, that when you started in this 30-some years ago, I mean, there were the 3 major networks, and that sort of made it life easy, but now just keeping track of everything must be difficult.
Constantly, but fortunately, I get to see it ahead of time. In the old days, you could only talk about it because how could you see it ahead of time? Now, I've got FedExes arriving at my door several days.
So they still FedEx. Have any of them moved to digital presentation for you?
Yeah, ABC and Hallmark and a couple of others instead only stream it to me. And that's not as good, but I'll take it, So I watch a lot of this stuff ahead of time. As a matter of fact, we were just talking about quality stuff. You know what I was watching and paused to come over here just before my grandson arrived? What I was watching was Jersey Shore Shark Attack.
Jersey Shore Shark Attack? There's quality TV for you.
It is a fun, goofy thing only because it makes fun of an even goofier show. It makes fun of Jersey Shore. And then it has the Sharks Attack. My favorite movie, and I'm sorry for all the Joey Fatone fans out there, okay? But Joey Fatone has the shortest appearance I've ever seen him make. He stands up and starts to sing. He's midway in the first verse when the shark inexplicably I'm sorry. And all people can say was, "Oh my God, a shark just got Joey Fatone."
It sounds like that bad shark thing from Saturday Night Live, where every time you open the door, Chevy Chase would get you.
The land shark.
The land shark,
So that is just a goofy thing, and incidentally, that's going to be this coming Saturday on Sci-Fi, which tends to have goofy movies every Saturday.
It does.
And so they promised this is the first time they're going to have 4 straight. The next 4 Saturdays are going to have one of them made by Roger Corman.
Wow.
Which goes way back to when we were watching. And, you can get nostalgic in a different way for this stuff. I mean, Roger Corman, is older than anybody in this room, okay? He's 84 years old, okay? And he makes these things in which back in the 50s, he made these super cheap films. He made Little Shop of Horrors for I forget what, $15,000, the original one, and the dentist chair fell down, and he said, "Well, we'll leave it in. It takes too long to fix it." You know, all these things like that. Well, now he's doing the same thing for the Sci-Fi Channel in his 80s, and that kind of thing is goofy fun in its own way. So cable does so much, but cable gives you Jersey Shore Shark Attack, which is good, and it gives you Hemingway and Gelman, which is good in a much better way.
But you know, Mike, I mean, I don't know how much it would take to make me have to watch the real Jersey Shore. I mean, that's the only downside of your job. That would be, there must be a few of those that are absolute torture.
Yeah, and fortunately, they have a sense, and they don't usually send things that are bad, but sometimes they do. And so I just, from everything I've heard and a little bit I've seen, I agree with the Jersey Shore Shark Attack is awful. It's interesting when they occasionally send you something that's really, really bad, and then you'll.
They might have another reason. Hopefully, it'll be canceled sometime.
Yeah. But sometimes they'll send it thinking it's good. I've seen, for instance, I've got all the pilots for all the fall TV shows now, good and bad. I've only worked my way through NBC and CBS so far. I'm a little bit disappointed. The NBC comedies are all bad, with the exception of one called Guys with Kids. And that surprises me, because NBC comedies tend to be good. I've seen some okay stuff. The one CBS comedy is not good, which really surprises me. It's called Partners, and it's directed by Jim Burrows, which usually means great. So
this is the last year for 30 Rock, too, so NBC is going to lose, really, its flagship comedy.
Yeah, well, in ratings, Office is its flagship. But that's having trouble in ratings too.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I hope that NBC bounces back. Honestly, the good news in TV lately has been ABC. The last 2 years, ABC, go back about 6 or 7 years ago, they had this one great time. That's been 8 years ago now, where they opened Desperate Housewives and Grey's Anatomy at the same time. It defines how you can make a very broadly popular show, but also insert intelligence in surprising ways in it, injected it here and there. And Lost, all three of those shows, same time, great time.
None of which I've ever seen. I mean,
I've seen it periodically.
He watched it his mother's TV.
And they are, what I saw was pretty decent.
Yeah.
And it was just a sign that if you want to make a broadly popular show, it can be smart too, if you want to. Okay, so ABC was on a roll then. They didn't do much after that. Then all of a sudden, Steve McPherson, the program guy who originally shepherded those through, disappeared overnight. They would not confirm or deny sexual harassment charges. He was gone. Okay, this was 2 years ago. They had to bring in a guy named Paul Lee. And this guy, of all things, was an Oxford graduate. And the thought of, oh my God, an Oxford graduate running the network that once had the Ani and Marie show? Yeah. How could this be? But I'll tell you, ABC ever since then has been the surprise network. Paul Lee he's done a wonderful job in ABC Family. He's doing a great job there. I haven't seen the shows yet for this year. But last year was the year he came up with Once Upon a Time, which was a great show, and he did some other shows really well. He's done great with the comedy lineup. He didn't do Modern Family, but he's shepherded really good shows around it.
Now,
this is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan.
These program directors must be highly paid.
Because
it's about a personality.
They burn them out quick.
They burn them out super fast.
Get a few years out of them, and they're done.
And as Steve Martin once used to say, it's a field where you can fail up. Yes. In other words, many of those guys become program directors because they've done several other things badly on the way up. The guy who is now doing Fox badly used to do NBC very bad.
I see.
So it's
is he improving a little?
Yeah, he's learned a little from what he's doing. Yeah,
then they're probably paying him more.
How many chef shows do you think they can put on?
Oh my God. That's the thing about cable, and you know it's that they will try anything they can do. How many cupcake shows? How many chef shows? Yes. But it's good we're talking about it right now because right after your show ends, 8:00 tonight,
Master Chef.
Well, yeah, there's two of them, one after another. 8:00 is Hell's Kitchen, and 9:00 is Master Chef.
Gordon Ramsay. Ooh.
They're both with Gordon Ramsay.
Well, they had to clean up Gordon Ramsay. He was fun to watch on BBC. Every other word was the F-bomb.
Cooking F-bombs.
Yeah. Oh, God.
But those are back to back. They both have Gordon Ramsay, and like I said, 8:00 and 9:00 tonight on Fox. But here's the difference. It's like twins. and one's the evil twin, and one is the good twin. Because Hell's Kitchen is just a terrible, cruel, stupid show, which totally Gordon Ramsay, and it starts tonight with a stunt which shows just how sadistic these chefs will let the show be if they want to be. Okay.
They're bullies.
They are. They're just, it's absolute bullyism is what it is. And I mean, I was in the army. I was in Vietnam. I was in boot training camp for there. I can't say I particularly liked the boot camp then, and I don't like Gordon Ramsay now. And pretty much the same reason. Gordon Ramsay is drill sergeant with better hair. That's all it is. Okay. Anyway, that's an awful show at 8 o'clock. Okay. But then later on, 9 o'clock, they turn around with Master Chef. Again with Gordon Ramsay, with two nicer people next to him. But the difference is, 8 o'clock he's working with professionals. 9 o'clock he's working with amateurs. He's very nice to them. They're very nice to them. And it's actually an entertaining show. So I would say that watch them both, but just
which one gets the better ratings?
We'll see.
That's a good question. They haven't put them back to back before. Hell's Kitchen's been on for longer.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah. But overall, the theater of cruelty that they had on some of these reality shows has faded out. In other words, Simon Cowell started theater of cruelty on American Idol.
Yeah.
But he could get away with it because he was clever and frankly because he was telegenic. It really helps.
And he was a Brit, so he wasn't one of us.
It somehow sounded better, or you could distance yourself.
Another show.
Yeah. So that was the start of Theater of the Cruel. Lately, they've kind of cut back on that. Even American Idol very, very rarely gets negative now. There's very little negativity on TV. Howard Stern has been surprisingly tame so far on that. So there's not as much of that. Gordon Ramsay's one of the few very evil people on TV right now.
We have a culture, though, where we look at Dr. Laura and we look at people like that. We do like, there's a whole sort of subculture that really likes people who bully other people. And I don't know why they find that entertaining.
That's true, but we have to look at, Dr. Laura's ratings are big by radio standards, but still it's a tiny, tiny segment of the audience. And, it's just like whenever I hear something that Rush Limbaugh said, and I think, my God, who could ever listen to that on purpose? And you realize that yes, there's a tiny percentage of America that will do anything, and there are also people who will bullfight and throw dynamite.
Not anymore. They're actually phasing out bullfighting.
Oh, good. Somewhere there are people fishing with dynamite right now, and somewhere there are people listening to Rush Limbaugh, but it's huge by radio standards, tiny by human standards.
Now, do you ever critique the news shows? Because one of my favorite things now is on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings on MSNBC, Chris Hayes has a 2-hour show called Up on MSNBC that I think is just fabulous. He does it sort of like Charlie Rose style with a group of people, and they have roundtable discussions of serious issues. It's just brilliant, and I've never seen anything quite that good.
It's Saturday and Sunday mornings. Saturday, what time?
8 to 10.
Oh, okay.
No cheap shots, no trite.
No,
that would be
people who really know what they're talking about. People who really have the research and the data and their, and very clear points of view. It's really a fascinating show. Followed by Melissa Harris Perry for 2 hours, who's quite good, maybe not quite as good as Chris is, but they're putting together some very intelligent 2-hour blocks now on MSNBC on the weekends. When on the weekends it was just sort of wall to wall. Here's another example of horrible prisons. Or,
overall, I've always been a fan of CNN, and I'm a big fan of Soledad O'Brien and
they're really
Cooper and stuff like that. What?
They're really
in the ratings.
CNN is really
they are financially.
But I really like their work, and of course I hate Fox News, as does everybody, I hope. And there's also some great news shows elsewhere on PBS. Frontline is great, and this isn't news, but nonfiction. American Masters, American Experience, these are super well done. The networks are capable of making good magazine shows, and I wish people would start watching Rock Center, which is the Brian Williams.
I tried to watch it, the first couple episodes, and I was not impressed. Is it getting better?
No, those are the ones I like. So that's it. So
okay.
So it's good by network standards, and it's just moved to Thursdays, 10 o'clock on Thursdays on NBC. And what I mean is, NBC used to claim that Dateline was a magazine show, and all they show was on Crime Stories, And no, now they're tackling, they'll usually have one serious subject and one interesting subject and one light note. It's at least a decently done. Give it a try. 10 o'clock Thursdays.
We can't leave PBS though without discussing Sherlock. Oh my
Ah.
goodness, I can't. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh,
I heard that's really good.
And you know what's interesting about the Brits is they only do them 3 at a time.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
season 1 is only 3, and season 2 is only 3.
And, and I love the first 3. I love the first one this year. I didn't like the other 2 as much, but you're right. They're great. Best writer in the world is a guy named Stephen Moffat. Okay,
Yes.
Moffat used to do the British version of Couplings. That's the funny one. Then he went on to do to revive Doctor Who, and now he writes some of the Sherlocks, including the first one this year. Produces the others. He's very, very clever, and anything you see Stephen Moffat's name on, do it. But yeah, you're right. Sherlock is great, and unfortunately, those we've seen the 3 this year. We'll have to wait till next year to see more.
The problem with episodes, and I will now spoiler alert these, the last 2 episodes in this season were that they both had the same ending, which is the person whose dad isn't dead.
Yeah.
And of course that was the ending on House. And I kept telling couldn't we mine a different vein here? Does everybody have to really be alive even after we bury them, and they come up with some clever way to
Writing for Sherlock Holmes is probably one of the most difficult jobs in the world because the fans of it are crazy. I mean, they know everything intimately. If you make one small step.
Oh no, but this is not an attempt to be authentic. This is completely
because it's modernized.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because he sets them nowadays, they can do it. And here's what's interesting: CBS also has a show.
It's coming up.
Have you
seen it?
Yeah, I did. It's fairly good. Like I say, I wasn't blown away by CBS. It's a fairly good. It's a straight thing of what if Sherlock Holmes was nowadays? What if Dr. Watson was a woman? And the rest of it is pretty straightforward. Honestly, it doesn't have the humor that Sherlock does.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the wild sense. But it's decently well done. So that's okay. But yeah, that's what you got to do. If you want to do a new Sherlock, you got to take it, move it somewhere else.
Move it out
and you
of
can say,
contextual
hey, it's
history.
not my fault. Yeah.
It was funny though to see Benedict Cumberbatch as a blonde in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It took me 15 minutes to figure out who he was. You know, it's when you see somebody out of place and oh no, that couldn't be him.
Yeah. What's some of the new technology doing to television watchers and their monetization? What's happening?
You know,
what is some of the new technology that allows you just to
what's going to happen on Apple TV?
Oh yeah, on Apple TV, and you blow by all the ads.
Some of that, yeah. The trouble is, a lot of people are taping and shooting by, and the networks deny it. They say, oh, just some of the people, and they see some of the commercials anyway. They don't see the commercials, so that's going to hurt the financial underlings that make it work. The worst thing is that one of the 2 satellite systems claims that it's going to give people something that will automatically zap all the commercials. Now, here's the thing: the networks say, no, you can't, because you have contracted with us to take our material
in its
entirety. You've only contracted. If you do anything to give anyone the right to build a zap, you violate your contract. You can't have it anymore. I hope that's true, because it sounds so great to have no commercials. Well, here, I don't get the commercials, and I'll allow you got to not get any commercials. But if everybody gets no commercials, they don't make the shows anymore. And I want the shows to be made now.
Unless it's the HBO premium.
HBO and Showtime can make their shows. But this whole thing that gives us 10 zillion shows every week, and this whole system that delivers all of the commercial shows. My favorite drama, House. My favorite comedy, Big Bang Theory. My favorite show overall, The Daily Show. All those things, those exist because some people watch the commercials. Yeah.
Well, you know, Henry Blodgett wrote on Business Insider 2 days ago, or yesterday, I guess it was, that the latest Nielsen ratings show, however, he said, if you think that TV has somewhat escaped all of the impact of the digital revolution, he said it's really tanking, that it's really starting to go. And he suspects that what we will be looking at is more paid premium channels. But as it moves on to the computer screen and those 2 start to merge, it's very hard to even predict where it's going to go.
It's really a problem. Garrison Keillor once said about books, just recently said that we're getting to an age where there are 4 million authors, each of whom sells 12 copies of his book. You know?
Right.
In other words, you spread things out too far, and you can't mass enough to make anything of quality. Yeah, the TV networks have dropped down. Their only saving grace is that everything else has dropped down too, so they're still able to sell because the number of viewers they deliver is better than someone can get somewhere else.
And I grew up in the era in which there was a sort of national fireplace when you had, the Kennedy assassination, and everybody knew what Walter Cronkite had said and when he said it. But you also had dramas like Roots, for example, that really did cause a national dialogue on issues of race, educated a lot of people who had only seen the sort of happy version that you'd see in Gone with the Wind, the phony versions, and all of a sudden that series really caused people to think twice. You don't have that kind of mass experience anymore in the culture where everybody's participating in the same work at the same time, and that's for good and bad. I mean, I'm a niche audience myself. There's certain things I like, certain things I don't like, but that did give us something to talk about at the water.
Everybody talked about those the next day.
They
Absolutely.
And now there's very few. There's just a couple. And what's interesting, the first couple years of Lost, even we did talk about the next day. American Idol. They moved X-Files away from Fridays because they wanted it to be a work day where you could talk about it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And even Desperate Housewives were happy it was on Sunday because on Monday people talk about housewives. So you need the kind of a show which electrifies everyone, but there just aren't very many nowadays. And it has to be a show that you've heard a buzz about. But it used to be before you could drop something on someone.
Yeah.
30% of the audience would see something that no one had ever heard of before, and if it was good, you could just jolt people like that.
Yeah, you
can't do
could
anymore.
build an audience quickly that way too if it was good. Yeah, that's more difficult now in the niche world. Of course, people don't go to work like they did before either. They're working virtually on the computer with a webcam. So.
Whenever we sit and complain about there's no more water cooler shows, we got to remember there's no more water coolers.
That phased out also.
So you were part of that. I mean, the digital revolution hit newspapers, and you were forced to reinvent yourself.
Absolutely, and it's a big problem overall because boy, life was so much better for everyone when you knew you had a big fat newspaper with all kinds of information in it. And just when I see an event nowadays, I say, why didn't I know about that? And I realize it's because newspapers just don't have the space they used to. They cut
or the people.
Or the people.
They can't cover it.
They cut the staff in half. They cut to what they had to, which is the people covering these hard, straight news. They cut out the feature writers, including me. Fortunately, a lot of the feature writers still write stories, and so they still print them. So a lot of people like Ken Blickman and Kate O'Neill and me and some other people still write features. But it has hurt. But newspapers have been hurt about the same way everybody else has. We just spread out. It's not that people hate newspapers. It's that too many people think they can get their news somewhere else. I still disagree. As much as still bitter as I am at the State Journal, I have never not gotten my subscription to the paper. I read it cover to cover every day, and my wife reads it even more thoroughly than I do.
What do you think about their new move behind the paywall?
Here's the irony. The other day, for the first time, since we're subscribers, we can get beyond the paywall. Mm-hmm. The other day, the first time we tried, we couldn't get beyond it. I mean, we got a code, we got a password and everything. We still couldn't make it work. So I don't know how it works. Fortunately, we don't do the paywall much. We just read. We read the real newspaper.
You know, one of the things that I've noticed with paywalls is because I'm a blogger also, and I used to connect to those links. I don't do it anymore.
You don't bother anymore, so you don't drive any traffic there.
No, I drive no traffic to newspapers or magazines.
Well, I was reading the other day, and I think it's probably true that we are really still in the infancy, and we don't know how a lot of these things are going to shake out. I've actually found myself more commonly now reading The Guardian, The Telegraph, The Independent. I read a lot of British newspapers now, and I never would have seen them before. I mean, they're not here, but they're now producing American editions, and I really like them.
Right, and I get a lot out of The Guardian on books.
Yeah,
they cover literature.
Good.
Like a blanket.
And you know what's funny is in different ways isn't it funny how we defeated the British militarily, we defeated them economically, and yet years later we come around and we really admire what they do. Just like our favorite American network is the only one run by a Brit. Okay?
Well, right.
And some of the, at least reality shows, much as we get mad at them, the best ones are the ones produced by Brits. Okay.
I know, and we got Tina Brown and Andrew Sullivan and all these people. What is the deal?
They are very sharp.
They can't get an American a job.
Yeah. But the point is you look at some of these other British shows. There are some good British shows. Now, a network that from time to time they do a survey and they say, what's the best network that nobody sees? My answer is always BBC America.
Yes.
It's a very sharp thing. They always have interesting, odd shows. I just saw one which is set among the people planning the Olympics. Okay.
Oh, really?
And it's going to open on June 28th, I'll say roughly then. And it's just a wonderfully clever, weird, odd show, you know. And so yeah, I mean, you read the Brit stuff. I like to watch the British TV shows. Magnolia Hotel is a British movie. That's just good stuff.
Oh, they are. You're listening to LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We've been talking with Mike Hughes. Mike, you were one of the. Mike is really a hardcore Lansing Online News devotee here. He actually came down, remember, and appeared on our webcast.
Right, very early on.
Very early on when we were down there,
just
webcasting.
Just audio too.
Yeah, down at the Gone Wired Cafe. I've got that old video there somewhere online. We'll have to post that.
Do you think we can ask you back, Mike?
Oh yeah, that was great.
You're almost going to talk me into watching TV.
I
know. About TV.
Someday you watch it. You start with Big Bang Theory. Yeah. Okay. Then always watch the Daily Show, 11 o'clock on Monday through Thursday.
I never missed it.
And see, you can learn from her. Learn from her.
Sopranos, though. Oh, do you know how many times I still think of some of those episodes? I mean, they still stick with me. Even years later or something, I'll be just sitting there.
That was a water cooler show.
Yeah, that was
huge.
There's still good HBO shows. Beef and Girls are a couple of funny HBO comedies on Sunday night.
Was that the last Beef for the year last night?
No.
There's more coming.
Yeah, she's pregnant, not pregnant. It's all funny.
Yes.
Rumors are it's good stuff.
Yeah, it is good stuff. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Well, Bill, there were a couple things I wanted to check about with you. You're headed out on an adventure here tomorrow. You're headed down to New York City. What's going to be happening there?
Book Expo America, the annual event that brings all the publishers and authors together. There's thousands of authors there.
And you've been, the bloggers get together at the same time, really, don't
bloggers, they? Right. The whole blogger convention is 3 years old.
Yeah.
The publishing industry got into that pretty early.
They were smart. They figured out
they knew where the newspapers were going. There was nobody doing books anymore.
Yeah.
Bloggers are treated highly in a respected manner down there.
Isn't that nice?
It is really different.
It is.
They see that you're a blogger, or even a journalist, and boy, they jump all over you. And that's their bread and butter. They have no choice in promoting books.
Now you have a list of people that you plan to see while you're down there. Who are some of the?
Well, a couple of highlights, of course. There's going to be Richard Ford,
yeah.
MSU graduate. He's got a new book out called Canada, and also Joyce Carol Oates. He and Joyce are going to do a program together. I'll be seeing Alexi Sherman,
Alexi,
and he's a Native American writer. He's got a new book out. Dennis Latham, Connolly. There's just a ton of people. All the big ones coming. Even James Patterson is showing up this year.
Is that right?
I have no clue.
With the fleet of people who are actually James Patterson?
Well, no, they couldn't hold him in Jacob Javits Center.
Everybody gets to write about it.
But even for him to show up is real. I mean, 80% of his books are ebooks.
Yeah.
He could care less about public.
Wow, it's amazing that he's still willing to do that. You know, I was going to encourage people to. Lansing Online News has a bunch of items that I think people ought to pay attention to. You and I have been talking a little bit over the last few days. Europe appears to be headed into a new territory. Huffington Post, as of 3 o'clock this afternoon, announced that there's going to be an emergency meeting tomorrow of the financial directors of the G7, trying to find a way out of the trap. That's why I spent the weekend putting together a list of suggestions that if there is indeed an economic meltdown, what should you do with your money, and what should you be thinking about in terms of trying to protect yourself? It's not an easy answer. The problem that I had is there's no simple checklist.
Well, what can you do? There's the mattress and nothing else.
Well, the challenge is figuring out whether you are going to put your money, it is a giant casino, so you're going to put your money on inflation or deflation,
right.
Bill.
Who knows?
I know
I'm not putting it in CDs.
No. Well,
housing. I think housing is the answer.
I've been looking at that. I actually think that the federally insured deposit is still a better bet because, boy, if it gets to the point where the federally insured doesn't pay off, all bets are off anyhow. The trick is, I think a lot of people have their money tied up in retirement accounts that are not insured, and that's going to be a challenge.
And are invested in stocks and
bonds, yes. I know I was, many years ago, well, actually it was now 3 years ago, I went to the TIAA CREF office here because many academics have their money in that system. And I decided I was going to pull all my money out and put it into my local credit union in CDs, right? Because and the gentleman informed me that, fortunately for me, Michigan State's one of the few places where you can pull out at least some. Most universities won't let you pull out any. And I was able to pull out a large chunk and the balance in 10 installments over 10 years, right? And I said, well, why would that? He said, well, basically they don't trust people to handle their own money. The government has stepped in, and that was his attitude. And I said, well, no, maybe there's another way of looking at it. Maybe it's really that, the lobbyists that you have, since you're an insurance company, do a much better job of making sure that my money stays in your hands than my money is in mine. And he wasn't real happy about that answer. But that's really a challenge for people. We don't even have control of our own retirement funds.
No longer, and for the longest time, everybody thought they were flush.
They did.
And we're planning a retirement based on income they expect.
I know.
No one should do that.
No, I know too many people who saw that 40% decline in 2008 take a huge chunk out. And, some people have made part of it back, but it's still going to be a challenge. That's really going to be an exciting era. I have my good friend Ray down there in Ypsilanti. He always says that he keeps his money in shotgun shells and canned beans, which I think is I hope he doesn't have too much in his retirement account, or his house is going to groan under the weight. God, it's really a challenge nowadays.
I think it's not going to get better for a while.
Well,
I don't want to seem overly pessimistic.
Well, the question is, do we see bank runs start in Europe? That's the one thing nobody wants to talk about. There have been some in Spain, and there's been some in Greece. But it's going to be an exciting summer, I fear. A little more exciting than I had planned on, potentially.
Stay close to home.
Check out LansingOnlineNews.com. There's a bit of advice. I did get a good tip, though, from one of our readers who said that the amount of silver in dimes is about 90%. So it's not a bad currency to put all your money in dimes.
Okay, I'll take that tip.
Start carrying bags.
I don't have to melt them down or anything like that. Smelt them.
I know. That's the problem with gold.
Yeah.
How do you prove it's gold? Yeah.
You do it with electricity.
Electricity. There is one sad bit of news I would like to pass on. One of our guests who had been here a few months ago was a gentleman named Big Perm, and Perm Page. And he was really, I had only had the opportunity to meet him once. He came in with Brandon Armstrong and other people, along with Rena Risper, to talk about problems of violence in the community.
That was one of our most moving shows.
Oh.
That was a tough show to do.
Tough show to do. Big Perm had actually the gentleman who was killed outside of the loft, who was a victim of gunfire outside of the loft, died in Perm's arms, one of his friends, Notch. And I noticed that over the months he was raising money for a headstone for Notch's grave. He really was dedicated to trying to make the community a better place. He was a hip-hop mogul who felt that his industry was taking kind of a hard hit, as if it were the cause of the violence, when actually he was working pretty hard to try to reduce violence in the community. He passed away this past week, suddenly of an illness, and it was really sad to see that. There will be a memorial for him on Thursday night at Fahrenheit, the club on Cedar Street. They're going to be doing a fundraiser for the family, and it's been kind of a sad thing to see his passing.
So I hope people remember him.
And I think they remember him fondly. We're talking about remembering things. Here's a sort of segue into our next segment. We're going to be talking about trying to preserve pieces of Lansing. There's a new group. We have here Gretchen Cochran, and we also have Daniel Balmer and Ballman. And we're going to be talking about what is your new group involved in doing, and what are you trying to save here in the community?
Well, we started out forming Preservation Lansing with the idea of giving awards to people who are spending the money and putting the sweat equity into restoring their homes or their businesses. And then what happened a week after we launched that project, we learned that Lansing Community College was going to be demolishing 3 houses at the corner of Saginaw and Capitol. All 3 of them are from the 1890s. One of them is the old Arbaugh family house. So we've been using that as a rallying cry, that it is just so easy to go right on destroying our history. And so that's what we're working on. We will continue with the award piece. You can go online at Preservation Lansing and find information about that, but you can also go, just a second, I have right here, tinyurl.com, Preservation Lansing, You'll find a form there if you want to nominate a property. You can nominate your own or someone else's that has been rehabbed within the last 2 years. There are categories, and what you will get is a whole lot of notoriety. We are going to knock ourselves out, publicize
positive PR, maybe not quite notoriety.
Yes, positive PR. But then in October, we will have final awards and a huge blowout still being designed.
Well, Dana, let me ask you, when did the group get started? When did you launch?
Daniel.
Oh, okay.
That's fine, and I'm actually not the person to ask that because I'm something of a latecomer.
Oh, you're a latecomer.
I am.
Ah.
Sorry.
Gretchen,
Well, it was about 6 months ago. What
6 months
started it was the demolishing of Holy Cross School on Saginaw. All of a sudden, it just was a pile of bricks. No notification to the neighborhood, no warning, no demolition permit, we're told.
Really?
Yes. So the neighbors were so shocked, and all of the families that had been involved in that school for decades, that we decided that it was time to start doing something about it. So for the last 6 months, we've been planning this award program, but we want to take a more positive look to reward people who are really making the efforts and doing the work.
I went out on a photo shoot around the city of Lansing and was surprised to see Holy Cross boarded up. And when I took photographs of it, I thought to myself, well, what are we going to do with this? I mean, it's an interesting looking building, and I thought, I wonder. And then the next time I went by, there was no building there. So.
It is a parking lot.
We seem to have an incredible need for parking lots here in Lansing. That seems to be the only thing we put up nowadays is yet another parking lot. I'm always wondering about that. What's going to happen? Now you're going to try to preserve the 3 homes now that are in the community that they're in danger of being torn down. When do we know?
The plan is that they will come down in August or in September, but there's a process to be gone through between now and then. They have to get a demolition permit from the DNR. That will have to do primarily with asbestos and lead.
Oh, I see.
But then another demolition permit will have to come from the city, and that one will take into consideration historic aspects. None of the properties was ever registered on a historic list anywhere, and Dan probably knows more about that and why that would be important.
Sure. I suspect that the intention was always to, whether it's these properties or other properties, was to include them on a list called the National Register of Historic Places, which is that's often presumed to be the more powerful designation.
The national list.
That's correct. That's the presumption. It's actually an incorrect presumption. The reality is that it's the local designation of properties listed on the local register of historic places when the local historic district commission, which Lansing has one, it's a city advisory board, but it's the properties that are listed on the local register that actually receive the protection from any modifications. Now, that's not to say that the National Register doesn't provide a certain amount of
protection.
Well, that protection.
Prestige.
Yeah, there you go.
Prestige.
Exactly. The expectation that would be that the National Register would have a bit more teeth, but it's just the other way around. Now, typically, something that's listed on the local register would be eligible for listing on the National Register and quite possibly the state register as well. But it's really and it's a relatively small number of properties within the city of Lansing that are listed on that local register and receive the local protection. I suspect that the intention was to list those three properties in particular, but actually the ones surrounding them immediately as part of a group, typically referred to as a National Registered District.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. I'm confused about how the process works, and I'm going to ask you to step me through it. If there is a home that's on one list or the other or both, does that mean that a city can never touch it and that preserves it forever? Or is that just a recommendation to the city that it shouldn't do anything with it?
I'm going to simplify my answer because the reality is that just because it actually can be delisted, property that sort of receives yeah, exactly, protection could ultimately be removed, have that protection removed. But the short answer is, if a property is listed on the local register and it receives the protection afforded by the local historic district commission, and a person wants to make changes, and, the list that the changes could be as insignificant as replacing windows or something as significant as building a major addition or even an outbuilding. Any exterior modification to the building, with the probable exception of something like this minor as paint or repair, that work would have to be submitted as part of an application for certificate of appropriateness, which would be submitted to the local historic district commission. In this particular case, it's the person in the planning department or building department of the city. That information is then passed on to the historic district commission, and they would take it up at their regular monthly meeting and basically find a way. Hear the owner's presentation as to how they want to make those modifications, and then the historic district commission would rule on the changes proposed. I want to make a specific point in saying that I think that the expectation is generally that this is sort of as a city advisory committee, and they sort of sit in judgment of a homeowner. And I actually sit on the historic district commission in East Lansing. I sat on the historic district commission in Ann Arbor, and I worked with the historic district commission in Kalamazoo for 5 years. The reality is that probably 95% of the applications for certificates of appropriateness that are presented to the historic district commission are approved. Sometimes they're approved with modifications, sometimes they're approved straight out. And so the work is relatively minor. It actually can be approved by staff, and then it's just reported to the historic district commission at their meeting. But my sense is that it's actually a lot more gets approved than people generally presume.
What are the criteria that determines whether a house is worth being part of that listing, and how do they get nominated?
Right. So whether as part of the process of establishing the historic district, the city would typically appoint a study committee of local historians, preservationists, people that are just have an interest in history or architecture, and they would put together these forms that we see here in front of us. Those are called survey forms, and as you can see, there's a fair amount of information about when it was constructed, some of the significant, what they call character-defining features of the individual buildings, and they would put that together for perhaps an individual building if it's very significant, or for a collection of buildings if individually they're not quite as significant, but as a group they gain their significance. That information is assembled in the study committee report, and a recommendation is made to the city commission or city council as to whether or not the study committee believes that the particular area or the particular building should be listed on the register.
Now, it's just going to be my guess, but we're past that process. You couldn't get these approved in an affair, isn't that? I mean, who has to make that move forward?
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know whether there would be any reason why these properties couldn't be nominated for listing on the National Register. But as I say, the reality is that wouldn't necessarily stop the demolition. Right. They are most definitely National Register eligible.
Okay.
Which would provide about the same amount of protection as saying that they're actually listed on the National Register.
So let me describe for you a little bit of the details of particularly two of the properties. One's one at 205 Saginaw, and that's actually at the corner of Saginaw and Capitol. That's the one that I call the Arbois House. It was actually built in 1902. One of the parlors inside of it, all of the woodwork is bird's eye maple, something I have never seen anywhere before. All of the oak woodwork is still there. It's never been painted. Wonderful staircase going up. But I saw that, was inside that house on Thursday. On Friday, I went back. And in between those two times, the asbestos inspectors had come in with a sledgehammer and made holes. Let's see, what's as big as that?
2 foot by 2 foot?
A hula hoop, as big as a hula hoop. One after another in those walls, so that now when anybody comes in, it just looks so destroyed. It's just heartbreaking. So that every day that the testing goes on when the intent is to demolish, and parts are disappearing. The guard that let us into the building told us that the sink was gone already out of that house. Meanwhile, the other house, which is the law offices at 617 North Capitol, that has asbestos shingles on the outside and a little wart that's been stuck on the front. It's not so lovely to look at, but all of that could be removed. And when you go in that front door, you've got 11-foot ceilings. Tin ceilings are still there. Wood parquet floor in the entryway. Just one wonderful detail after another. And they are going to the dump.
6-foot wide pocket door that's tucked into the wall. So there's a same. It's just got a number of terrific details on the inside. There's a 6-foot pocket door that's hidden in the wall and just comes out and out and out until it closes up.
Gretchen and Dan, do you think there would be a different outcome? I know these were on the market and been offered for sale, but they've been offered sort of for sale to a commercial market. Do you think a homeowner would be interested in buying a house like this and restoring it? Especially Gretchen, who I know has restored something that was like awful.
Yeah, I live in an 1879 house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
but I mean, people are willing to do that now. There are people that restore houses because they think they're special. Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know.
We never tried.
Was it zoned commercial so that you couldn't use it as a residence?
You can get that fixed.
Okay, you get that.
I actually would presume, not knowing specifics about what that zoning would permit, typically is sort of a less intensive zoning like a residential use would be permitted in a commercial. So the one house, the one on the corner, which Gretchen's right, there's three, and there probably are three different levels of care that have been exercised on them throughout the year. The one on the corner is really, it's a gem. But it's, I would, top of my head, I would say it's easily 3,000 square feet.
Oh,
yes. I mean, I was just looking at the forms. It's big. So it would be a significant undertaking for single-family residents to consider using that building.
Given your experience having been in Ann Arbor, Kalamazoo, other places around the state doing similar kind of work trying to preserve things, where would you say Lansing falls? Are we at the bottom of the list of communities that, in terms of how good a job we're doing of saving things?
I can only speak to the number of properties that are listed on your local register, which is there was an article in the City Pulse a few weeks ago that was actually done as the commemorative to the kickoff of the Preservation Lansing effort. And there's a bar graph that was provided. The number of properties that are listed on the local register are considerably smaller than properties than cities of similar size. However, make this point pretty clear is that if there's not grassroots support for these efforts, they're going to fail anyway. If it's something that comes from the top down, in as much as that, the study committee would be appointed by the city council, city commission, ultimately it's the property owners within that have to basically approve it, to buy into it, because if there's not grassroots property owner support for these things, it's just not going to fly. So the fact that there's so few properties doesn't suggest to me that there's a great many properties that would be eligible for listing.
Oh, I see. So we wouldn't. They're still there.
That's exactly right. And my comment in the Pulse article, and I'll tell you now, is that there's a block of properties where it's the southwest part, west of Martin Luther King and just north of 496. There's some great old brick Tudors, which were built in the 1920s, just gorgeous old buildings. And I don't presume, in fact, I know they don't have local historic district protection, but the homeowners have been so good at
protecting.
Yes, exactly. I had a project there a couple of years ago, and I liked to go early to meet with the owners so that I could sort of wander the neighborhood and see these other properties that I wasn't working on, because they were so gorgeous. They just really loved it.
So basically we're saying we need to change some culture in this community.
Get people more active, apparently.
About historic preservation.
Exactly, and that's the intention of what Preservation Lansing is trying to do, is that, if there's this carrot, this award that's going to be an annual award, the hope is that that's going to raise some awareness, and that there will be a greater effort for people to come forward and say, I am interested in preserving these buildings. It's got to be great. It's got to be sort of a social change where people start to value some of the things that have been lost.
A week from Saturday, the Lansing Historical Society is going to do a downtown tour of downtown buildings that have been preserved. And 10 years ago, they couldn't have done that to her in the same way.
Oh, really?
The buildings were ugly because they'd been hidden behind facades and things. But so at least downtown, yeah, there is definitely a shift. But that's commercial property, and somebody had seen some real value in saving those buildings, but it's not quite moved into the neighborhoods the way it should here.
I was driving around downtown not long ago and noticing some of the law firms or other nonprofit places that are in some of those older homes. And they're lovely looking places, and I do hope that we are able to preserve that. It seemed to me, though, that a city like Ann Arbor has a lot more of those interspersed. Or am I wrong?
But no, it's probably a bit tighter. There's a lot less open space.
Yeah.
A lot fewer parking lots, shall we say.
Yeah.
That some of the historic fabric is still intact.
I had a wonderful experience, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, where a gentleman named Jack Pickett, who has unfortunately since passed on, but he was a real character, very much a character. He had an insurance company, and he also owned a publication called The California Farmer. And it sat in a 2-story house in the middle of San Francisco's financial district. It was this 2-story house with these cavernous buildings on all sides of it. And he was just such a cranky old multimillionaire that nobody was going to get it from him. I mean, I'm assuming that since then it has disappeared. But, he had enough money to be able to withstand the forces of progress pretty well.
Well, we felt that the Downtown Neighborhood Association, which is surrounding us here at LCC, started Preservation Lansing because we sensed that there not only is a change in the commercial buildings, there's been so much done, but there's beginning to be just a change in attitude. Now when we're talking about sense of place and sustainability,
yes.
I mean, what sense does it make just to destroy our history,
yeah.
As well as all of the materials and the labor and the crafts that have gone in, the craftsmanship and the craftsmen and women who have built those bird's eye maple woodwork. And
well, that's one of the questions I have is, are there still artisans available who can restore these things? Is that part of the challenge?
Sure. There are, absolutely.
And one of the wonderful programs that's going on is Lansing Community College is teaching students at Restoration Works, which is the program on the east side on Kalamazoo. They are restoring a house and teaching the crafts to do that. And
so there's a bit of irony there. So
that would be the classic definition.
One hand taketh away as the other.
Well, the parking lot they put in is a sustainable parking lot, green parking lot, which is sort of there's something very wrong with that.
I do have a friend who left Lansing, and he restores Victorian homes down in Savannah, Georgia. And that's really been a lucrative business for him. I mean, it's just people finally realize the value of places that were just disappearing right now.
And that's the heart of the preservation. Actually, Charleston, South Carolina, but they're not too far from one another, where that's where the preservation movement in the United States began.
Is there a specific set of criteria that are used that says something? I mean, some of the places I've lived have been old. I don't know that they would have been worth preserving necessarily. I think they were just more, I think dilapidated is the word I'm looking for. So, I mean, where's that line?
Sure. It starts at, the expectation would be, to begin with, the property would be 50 years old or older.
Okay.
So the baseline. And of course now that's only 1962. That's exactly. So you're talking about
That's modern.
Exactly. The house I grew up in was effectively eligible for listing. And it would also be associated with a famous person or event.
Oh, okay.
So that might be, the George Washington slept here.
I see.
And it also could be associated with a famous designer, say an architect or interior designer.
A Dow home, something.
That's
and that's why those family histories, the research goes with the houses so much.
That's exactly right. So it's sort of is there a person or a place or a person or event that's associated?
So that's why the fact that was an Arbor home would serve in its favor for something like this.
And again, in that case, it's the funny thing is that, as Gretchen has said, the one in the corner is terrific. The one next to it needs a little bit of work, but the two beyond it, two south of it, are amazing. There's a great old stone Corinthian columns, and 2-story columns. The one immediately to the south, and the one after that is sort of a level stone and brick. I mean, just sort of a couple more steps, and nobody would.
Well, I remember as a child in Cleveland when we would drive through the city, and changing fortunes make a big difference. There would once been the Bracknell area that was quite gorgeous, and then all of a sudden it was blighted, and you have to work very hard to struggle to hold on to some of our history. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you will keep us apprised of what's happening with Preservation Lansing. Thank you very much, Daniel Ballman. Ballman, not Balmer. I keep wanting. I know a Balmer. Yeah, Gretchen Cochran. Thank you very much. Lansing Online News Radio. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. Tune in again next Monday night at 7.